Welcome to the latest edition of Russia Unmasked from the Centre of Russian Studies in Kyiv, in which we challenge the propaganda published by the Kremlin against Ukraine and share Ukrainian perspectives. My name is Tony Meehan. I'm based in London. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has been going on for more than 1,400 days, with an estimated 1.2 million Russian military killed or wounded. First, a prayer for Ukraine. Long may she survive, endure and prevail. As we approach a new year, there will be no happy wishes for Ukraine from Vladimir Putin, otherwise known as President Propaganda. In this episode, we have examples of his words used as weapons against the US and Ukraine, plus a major story from earlier in the year which exposes his abuse and the use of the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine for propaganda, spying, and in some cases treason. He condemns and demands the entire Donbas in talks with the United States. Putin has said that Russia, in talks with the United States, continues to demand control over the entire Donbas, including areas where it has failed to capture militarily. Putin held his traditional New Year meeting of the State Council on the 25th of December, formally devoted to issues of workforce training. However, this year it was different. Neither its correspondent nor other members of the State Council focused on this topic. Instead, Putin reportedly spoke at length about the talks with the United States and the Ukraine regarding the so-called peace plan, that is the Ukrainian United States peace plan. And he spoke about the agreements in Anchorage and the US peace plan, about the positions that were, one might say, agreed on the fly without any consultation with Ukraine at all. A personal agreement between the American president and the Russian president. He also said the Americans later stepped back from some of their own proposals after talks with Europeans, and that this was a sign of weakness. I'm sure the US president wouldn't like to be called weak, especially by Putin. Our next item of propaganda is the positioning of the US as a potential partner in the hijacking of Ukrainian nuclear plant. The first sentence tells the story that the United States and Russia have started to discuss sharing the spoils of war stolen by Russia. The fact that this is true or not is irrelevant, as it sets doubt in the minds of all Western and Ukrainian leaders that an arrangement has or is being discussed. Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin has said that the US is interested in setting up a mining at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and jointly managing the facility without Ukraine's involvement. As we know, the United States and Ukraine have been talking about mining licenses and what have you. He mentioned this during a meeting with business representatives, the situation around the nuclear plant, Europe's largest nuclear facility, which has been under Russian occupation since 2022. He stated that discussions with the states included the issue of joint management of the facility without Ukraine's participation. Putin also claimed that the American side is interested in organizing mining at the plant. However, the sides are considering supplies to Ukraine. Isn't that nice? Isn't it? They're being very generous. Electricity supplies to Ukraine at the initiative of the United States. So obviously the Russians wouldn't have considered supplying electricity to Ukraine under any circumstances. He also noted that the Ukrainians continue to work at the plant. However, they now have Russian passports. As we all know, propaganda runs through the Russian system. It's a second nature to them. It has become an automatic response to every situation. Here's an example where they just want to destroy somebody's reputation. It's a reputation attack on Steve Witkoff. A Russian ministry claims that Witkoff took a box of caviar from Russia for Trump. Now, the use of the word took as opposed to was presented with a box of caviar from Russia to Trump says it all. Technique is very simple. By questioning the integrity of the person accepting the gift, you immediately damage that person's reputation. The next step is you admit that you could be wrong, but by which time the damage has been done. Again, the same as we have in the nuclear plant. But you afford yourself a plausible doubt, yet at the same time question the honesty of the individual. So this allows you to deny any future challenge to your statement. So the 3-4 points are: you question his reputation, you then admit you could be wrong, by which time the damage has been done, as we've said. You afford plausible doubt, but question the honesty of the story's subject will be remembered long after the event. Where is this leading to, I hear you ask? Let me explain. A Russian regional ministry has claimed that US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, involved in talks on ending Russia's war against Ukraine, has taken, which sort of infers stolen, a box of red caviar from Russia for US President Donald Trump. The Ministry of Industry and Trade on social media said Donald Trump will try red caviar from Kyiv. A delicacy for the American president was delivered by lead negotiator Steve Witkoff. The ministry said that Witkoff had tried the caviar over lunch at the Sava restaurant in Moscow before heading for talks with Vladimir Putin. The ministry, that goes on to say, provided no evidence that the caviar was handed to Witkoff or delivered to Trump, but released photographs from the plant where the product is packaged. So, there we are, another little example. They never missed the trick. Parallel story to this, the Russians issued a statement ignoring Witkoff, glorifying the contributions to the peace talks of Jared Kushner to the extent that he, Kushner, would write the document to be presented to the United States. The objective being to get closer to Kushner and his father-in-law and position Witkoff as a secondary player. They never miss a trick. Let's go to church for propaganda. Why not? Propaganda, treason, people smuggling and child abuse. No matter what you think of Putin, he uses every perceived American strength as a weakness that he can manipulate. A commitment to protecting Christians, that was the American strength, and most certainly of the current president, no matter which branch or where they are living in the Christian community. It is reported that at the Alaska meetings between the US President and Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin at a military base in Anchorage earlier this year, that one of the demands Putin made at the meeting was that the his US counterpart, i.e. the President, provide security guarantees for Russian Orthodox churches in Ukraine. This is a clear reference to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow, which runs under their control, which despite an administrative separation in 2022, remains part of the Russian Orthodox Church. So in contrast, it's an independent that has no ties with Russia whatsoever, I do not think. Let's say Mr. Putin's request was perfectly targeted, as Trump is well known for having waged war on an anti-Christian bias. Also, the US Vice President, whilst still a nominee, incorrectly and inappropriately criticized and accused the Ukraine government for what he called attack on traditional Christian communities. Some Western lobbyists are also working publicly to defend both Ukrainian and Russian Orthodox churches. American lawyer Robert Amsterdam receives funding from a pro-Russian oligarch and deacon Novovinsky to represent the rights of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. In spring 2024, Robert Amsterdam reportedly threatened Ukrainian MPs with sanctions if they voted for a law banning Russian-linked religious organizations. He now regularly parrots Russian propaganda narratives, interviews with foreign media outlets claiming that Christians in Ukraine are being persecuted and the churches in general are being banned. However, if we put a different argument forward, the security services of Ukraine have regularly commented that the Russians have been using the church for many years as a tool of hybrid warfare in Ukraine to expand the Russian world. The security services also say it is not fighting against the church, but if a person wearing a cassock and carrying a censer commits a crime against the foundations of national security, then such as adjusting enemy fire, then there will be no indulgence for them. I like the religious term there. The security services told Ukrainska Pravda that 180 criminal cases into unlawful activities by priests have been opened since the full-scale war began in 2022. Among the suspects are 23 bishops. So it's going through the whole church. The offences committed range from treason and justification of Russian aggression against Ukraine to child abuse, smuggling citizens across the border, and much more. Right. So, from all of us here at the Centre in Kyiv, thank you very much for your attention. Please share this podcast with your friends and those you think who will be interested. The online address is Russia Unmasked at YouTube. We'll be back with more news from Kyiv soon. Until then, Slav Ukraini. Ukrainians were, are, and always will be here. Vladimir Zelensky. Thank you again. Goodbye.